2,591, 2,592, 2,593.
Welcome to another fat loss myth video. The myth we are going to talk about today is the spot reduction myth. If you haven't heard about spot reduction yet, the idea behind it is this. When working on a specific group of muscles, you supposedly lose more fat from the fat cells that surround that group of muscles. The most common example for this is people who do dozens or even hundreds of crunches in hope that it will reduce their tummy sizes. Does it really work? It doesn't. And to understand why it doesn't work, we'll first have to look at how your body uses and stores fat. First of all, fat is used all over your body for a multitude of tasks, like letting your hair grow, letting your heart beat, letting you walk, and so on. Second, the cells that do all these have specific fuel needs, and there are millions of these cells in your body. Now, if your body tried to monitor each of these millions of cells and their needs separately, it would be very, very busy. So instead it came up with a very simple system instead. Your body keeps a certain amount of fuel flowing in your bloodstream, and this fuel is fat in a special form which is called fatty acid. Now, whenever a cell somewhere in your body needs fuel, it waits for one of these things to float along, hails it, it stops, and then the cell consumes the fatty acid for fuel. When now the amount of these free-flowing fatty acids in your bloodstream drops, your body knows that more fuel is being needed, and then it signals to your fat storages to convert and release more of the fat stored inside them. And this order to convert and release is important because of the way in which the fat is stored inside the fat cells. The fat inside the fat cells and the fatty acids that later flow through your bloodstream are like raw oil compared to gasoline. And just like you couldn't use raw oil to run a car, your cells also can't use the fat stored inside a fat cell. So, to summarize this, what happens is this. All your body has to worry about is keeping the amount of fuel that is free flowing in your bloodstream constant, and all your individual cells have to worry about is getting the fuel out of the bloodstream. This means two important things. First, your muscle cells don't directly communicate with the fat cells. And second, even if they did, they couldn't use what is in the fat cells anyway. Now, just for fun, imagine if it really was the other way around and your cells would directly negotiate with the fat cells they have in their neighborhood. Of course, there are some cells in your body that have a lot of fat cells around them, and to them this would cause no problem. But there also are cells that have next to no fat cells in their vicinity, and to them it would mean that they might get no fuel at all, which of course wouldn't be a good idea. But enough now of theory. let's now look at two practical experiments that tried to find out if spot reduction works. The first one of these was already conducted in 1984, and in it a group of scientists had volunteers do sit-ups for 27 days. And during those 27 days, these volunteers did more than 5,000 of those sit-ups. At the beginning and at the end of the experiment, the scientists measured how much fat these people had around their abdomen, and there was no difference. Another study looked at seasoned tennis players. The reasoning behind this experiment was that if exercise reduced more fat on the body part being used, then tennis players should have less fat on the arm they usually play the ball with. And again, there was no difference between the arm dominantly being used to play the ball and the other arm. Still, you have people that say, hey, when I do these spot reduction exercises, I can feel how it gets hot there. That may be, but it has nothing to do with the fat cells there releasing fat. The point is simply that your muscles are not terribly efficient at using the fuel they get. Only about 25% of what they get as fuel they use for the task at hand, and the other 75% are turned out as warmth. And this is why a muscle you work out feels warmer than a muscle that hasn't been used. Last but not least, you have people that say, I did these exercises and they worked because the area I tried to spot reduce did lose fat. I believe you, but it has a simple explanation still. First, if you are new to exercising, then doing these exercises will make the muscle in the area slightly bigger, and the area may feel firmer. Second, if you do a lot of these exercises, they of course burn fuel. And because you burn so much fuel from doing them, you might lose weight. And if you are really lucky, you coincidentally lose the weight from the area that you spot reduced. So what to you seems like spot reduction at work and working is really just a coincidence. Still not convinced? Well, there is hope for you. One study did find that spot reduction might work, and that an increased breakdown of fat from fat cells around a muscle being worked on occurs. And during 30 minutes of exercise, this increased breakdown amounted to 0.6 to 2.1 milligrams per 100 grams of fat cells compared to other fat cells. Which means that if you want to spot reduce 1 gram of fat from 100 grams of fat cells around your tummy, you only have to do 500 hours of crunches. Have fun!